Good morning and welcome to our So What But What If campaign panel event. And today we're discussing online dangers and grooming. The So What campaign is a gender-based approach to safety, creating a safer future for younger generations. And the campaign came about as a collaboration between myself from One for Growth, Laura from Glasgow Girls Club, and with Ashley from Thrive and Survivors. And we held a women's safety panel event last November now in 2021, and it created more questions than answers. And we decided to create this campaign that will go on for a year, and it will finish on the 9th of December this year. And every single month we do a live panel event discussing quite difficult subjects that we need to break the stigma and make them open conversations in order to improve safety for the younger generations and to see what we can do as different campaigns and individuals to move safety forward at a quicker rate than it currently is. Now, we have an amazing panel with us today, and I am going to let you all introduce yourself. So I'm just going to go round the table, so to speak, on Zoom, and start with yourself, Jeremy.
Hi everyone, my name is Jeremy Indica. I make content online that discusses the topic of child sexual abuse. I've got a YouTube channel and various social media platforms. And one of my big aims is to get these discussions out into the open that are not being had currently.
Thanks, Jeremy. Marianne. Marianne, can you hear us?
Yeah.
If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Marianne. I am an outreach worker for the Enough project at Glasgow Women's Aid. So we support young women who are aged 13 to 19 years old, who have experienced any form of relationship abuse or are at risk of sexual abuse, online abuse, financial abuse and grooming within their own relationships.
Thanks, Marianne. Kim?
Thanks, Heather. I'm Kim Flower. I'm working with the Gilded Lily in Govan, and I'm project managing a 3-year programme called The She, which is all about supporting her empowerment. And one of the areas that we're very much concentrating on is social media, online sexual harassment, touching on online grooming. So that's really what I do. I'm here as partly as learning as much as sort of giving. I'm here to learn quite a lot as well.
Thanks, Kim. And Stuart.
Thanks, Heather. My name's Stuart Allardyce. I'm one of the directors of the Lucy Faithful Foundation, and I manage our Stop It Now Scotland services from Edinburgh, but we cover the whole of Scotland. Stop It Now Scotland is a child sexual abuse prevention charity. My background is a social worker that's kind of worked in the sexual violence field for about the last kind of 20 years or so, particularly a lot of work working with those people who have committed sexual offences in the first place.
Thanks, Stuart. So I think we'll kick the conversation off with yourself, Stuart. So you were going to give us an overview of what the current online dangers are for youth at the moment.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about kind of online solicitation and online grooming and what the data is telling us about the kind of nature and scale of the problem. And the nature and scale of the problem is vast and complex. So there's a number of ways of looking at this issue. One is looking at data that we have from the criminal justice system. And we know that in Scotland, we have kind of just under 1,000 people who are charged with offences in relation to viewing sexual images of children. And we also have, it's quite difficult to kind of pull out the data about online solicitation for some technical reasons, but it's probably around 1,000 people who are arrested each year for online offences involving online solicitation and grooming of children in some way. The important thing to get across is that the criminal justice statistics are the tip of the iceberg. And we have a vast, enormous issue that almost never comes to the attention of law enforcement. So if you look at the statistics from the National Crime Agency, and they produce a threat assessment every year. And their estimate is that between 550,000 and 850,000 people in the UK present a risk of sexual harm to children. Now, they come to that figure by looking at the people who are already in the criminal justice system, both contact offenders and online offenders. But then they particularly flesh that out through what they're seeing in terms of their intelligence reports, in terms of online behavior, both on the surface net and on the dark net itself. So we see a vast kind of the issue of cases here, and those figures might sound remarkable in a Scottish context. That would mean what, between kind of 55 and 85,000 people kind of present a risk of harm to children. But actually, I think that is commensurate with what we know from victimization data in terms of, between 1 in 5 and 1 in 10 children are sexually harmed in some way in Scotland. Also, it fits well, I think, with, we did a campaign last year with Police Scotland where we tried to reach out to people who may be having sexual conversations or communications with children, so involved with online solicitation, trying to kind of point out that actually there is support available that is anonymous and confidential online, provided by charities such as ours. And between April and May, over a 4-week period last year, when we ran that campaign, we had 65,000 hits on our website. From across Scotland. And now, obviously, a lot of those people will not be individuals who present a risk of harm to children, but many of them were. So we do know that there's a vast scale to this problem. In terms of the nature of the problem, just to say a few things about this, because I think that there's often a lot of urban myths about who the people are who are involved with this behavior. There's often a kind of image that's presented in the media of a kind of lonely, isolated guy sitting in his room on his own, in his 40s or 50s, on a laptop and grooming children. Well, the first thing to say is that in terms of the people that we work with every year at Stop It Now Scotland, who have been involved with online solicitation of children, people come from a wide range of backgrounds and a wide range of ages. And indeed, many of the people that we work with are married or in relationships. Many of them have children themselves. Sometimes they present a significant risk to their own children, sometimes they don't. The main trajectory that we see into the behavior is people saying to us that they've been involved with large amounts of cyber sex behavior generally online, and they have gravitated towards interactions with teenagers, often because actually they found teenagers more suggestible and more able to do the things that they wanted people to do online, and they move then towards using kind of coercion and various kind of strategies over time. But it's important to think about actually how people move to that position, and they're coming to it often from a whole range of different kind of cyber sex activities. The other thing in terms of kind of age, just to say something about that, is actually the data would suggest that actually there are quite a lot of young people and young adults that are involved with online solicitation. And indeed, a Scottish Government analysis of some of the justice and police data about 5 or 6 years ago suggested that the average age of victim of online solicitation in Scotland was 14, and the average age of perpetrator was 18. So we need to recognize there's a significant issue around kind of young adults. And when we put messages out about stranger danger, actually sometimes the people who are involved with online solicitation will know that they're the child that they're grooming from school, for instance. So there are kind of key problems with some of the kind of stranger danger kind of messages that we have in all of this. There's more I can say, and we can talk about the kind of process of grooming, but I think, you know, I'll stop there and kind of open it up for kind of wider discussion.
Thanks, sure. That was really interesting. Actually, the ages that you suggest of 14, but perpetrators at 18, it's just not something I'd even considered. I just, like you say, assumed it was so much older, because particularly any marketing materials you tend to see about stranger danger does tend to always be, like you say, the older man. And that's obviously just not the reality of it. So I don't know if anyone knows or can discuss where is this happening? So obviously we know it's online. Is it games, or where is the biggest danger?
Is it okay to come in? I think I would echo the age with Stuart. Young people now don't actually view strangers as dangerous. They're interacting with strangers all the time, whether it's, you know, online through gaming, social media platforms, and some of these places that they're doing that is actually very safe, and it's healthy relationships that they're forming and healthy kind of connections with people. So stranger danger doesn't, in the eyes of a teenager, it's not as applicable as it maybe was when we were teenagers. And isolation, however, does apply. So what Stuart said about maybe the sort of classic view of the perpetrator being lonely in their room, quite often that's where victims are. They're maybe being isolated through bullying, they've maybe been excluded from school for whatever reason, or non-attenders of school. So you'll see victims, we see victims, all different kinds of victims in all different sorts of circumstances. However, we definitely see more of young women who are isolated, whether that's through bullying, falling out with friendship groups, and are making these connections online with the best intent themselves, but without sort of the awareness of the threats, I think.
Yeah,
I think that's a really interesting point, Marianne. Even before lockdown, that whole, you know, when especially younger girls, boys, when there is, with all the bullying that goes on, they can feel so lonely and so isolated that actually someone shows them that slightest bit of attention. Do you know, I've worked with some young girls, and they are very isolated because of the lack of connection, the bullying that goes on, that I know that just that what seems like a hand of friendship, maybe online, offline, that they will reach out because they are so desperate to have that connection. And that's then post-COVID more so than ever.
So where are these connections happening? Is it gaming, or is there other online platforms that is happening?
It's happening on a whole range of different platforms. I mean, gaming is certainly one of the areas, and actually a key area for abuse of boys, actually. But also, you know, typically what will happen is those that are involved with the grooming of children will be interacting with children and young people, usually through things like social media, looking for vulnerabilities, picking up on the stuff that Kim and Marianne was talking about. I mean, any child can be groomed online, but actually, you know, what those who abuse do is that they're looking for inherent vulnerabilities that will make it easier for them to abuse the person and make sure that the person is silenced and doesn't tell anyone about this. And what they will generally then do is try and shift the conversation away from a public social media space to some kind of encrypted space, you know, and that's fairly easy to do now in terms of, you know, encrypted messaging that can take place. Even something like WhatsApp, for instance, is an encrypted space.
So there seems to be a grey line then between that healthy communication versus when danger kicks in. And I think obviously it is a different life now. Do you know what? Kids are online more, but we can't stop them. And I had an interesting panel a few months ago, and someone said, I was talking with my own daughter who's 10, almost 11, and I was like, oh, she doesn't get this, she doesn't get that. And they're like, completely irrelevant, because you can't stop what she sees when she leaves the house. And it's true, they all have phones. So I do understand we have to allow them to be online. There has to be that that's just the way life is just now. How do we protect that level of healthy communication? And is there red flags, or what do we need to look out for online? When does the danger start?
I think it's more, there's barriers to reporting for young people. So maybe if a young person's not allowed to be in a relationship at all anyway, for whatever reason, or is not encouraged to be in any sort of online friendships, when something goes wrong online, they're very unlikely to then be able to say something's gone wrong online. If they have already, made a mistake online before and been told don't do that again, whether it's sharing an image, which is really common with young people now, image sharing. If they've been kind of told, doing that, you can end up with a record, you could end up, these are all the consequences. If the conversations aren't open enough and they don't feel that they've got those open avenues, that's just one thing that can prevent them from. So it's about the shame and the stigma of coming forward and saying that this is happening. And that's for any young person, let alone somebody who's already very isolated for any reason. So it's more about being able to have continuous conversations with young people without kind of blaming them for what's happening. Lots of mistakes will be made, particularly by teenagers in online spaces and throughout their kind of teenage healthy and unhealthy relationships. And it's about saying that's okay, we're going to make mistakes. And it's really important to be able to communicate about them with your peers, with people that can help you, and with each other.
Yep.
Which is really difficult. It's difficult to parent as well, because obviously you want to be able to be telling your children and encouraging them and telling them, but the avenues need to be really open so that if things do go wrong, because they probably will go wrong at some point, that they can come to you. And that's the same with schools. And
that's so important, Marion. I think you're absolutely spot on. I mean, I think my kids go off to school every day, and when they come back from school, I ask them how their day was. They might not tell me very much, but it's a kind of ritual that we have, because we have kind of curiosity about our children's lives and what they're up to. But that seems to stop then with respect to their online lives. We don't really spend much time with our children asking about who they spend time with online, what kind of apps they're using, what games they're playing. When do we sit down and play games with them online? When do we move to that thing about digital parenting? So it's not a one-off conversation. It's about actually recognizing that we need to be curious about our children's online lives, even though actually we might not be terribly interested in actually the latest app and games and online stuff, but we make an effort to be interested in our children's school lives and their friendship groups and what have you. So we need to kind of reach out there. And another quick message which kind of resonates with what you're saying, I think, and that's stuff about making mistakes and being upfront that the children will make mistakes online. We did a bit of work in Glasgow with young people in a high school, looking at what messages they wanted integrated into online safety and what they wanted to hear back from adults. And they said one of the things that was the main reason why they wouldn't go to an adult if they fell out of their depth online and things were not going in the way they wanted to in terms of a relationship, when they felt that they were at risk in some way. They were worried that adults would then take all their digital devices away from them.
That makes perfect sense, because that's the first punishment for your kids, isn't it? I'm going to turn the Wi-Fi off. So
if they were saying, actually, if adults could give us a message which is, look, if there's a problem, or if you make mistakes, what we'll do first of all is make sure everything's in place to keep you safe. And if we can do that, keeping you online, then we absolutely will. It might not be possible, but if we can, we will.
For me, it's also, I feel, a challenge. A big part of the challenge is when we're asking young people these questions about, what games are you playing, what apps are you on, can we check it's like a checking process that they're not interested in us being involved in. We are adults, we are ancient, we come from a different era, we know nothing, and they will give you, I feel like they will give us the answers that we want to hear, much like the question of how was school today? It was all right. Get up to much? No. Like they don't want to interact with us. So how can we, for me personally, it is about open conversations and letting them know that, if they are out of their depth or they feel in danger, you can come to us for sure. I think that's absolutely necessary. But I also think it's about how to empower them on how to use the tool so that they feel confident in using the tool, right? So it's like how to challenge their mind to feel like, okay, we've got this tool, which is a mobile phone, and how can I use it skillfully, right? So you're actually encouraging the child's ability and empowering them to make decisions whilst they're online, because we are not there while they're online, right? As soon as they're looking at their phone, they are in a different planet. They're in a different world without you there anymore. So I do completely agree with this being an open conversation and an open space, but that actual concept of it being an open space and you can come to us if there's any dangers or you feel out of your depth, that's always been the case. Even before the internet, we were being told that when we were out on our bikes, if anybody approaches you, you can, if you lose this, if you break this, you can cut that. That philosophy's always been there. I agree with it. But I just also think we need to come around the other side as well and get these young people feeling confident, empowered, and get them very skillful.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So
sharing links, things of letting them know how to take images down themselves. I know that if a young person phones into Childline, somebody's been maybe coercing them to send more images, blackmailing them. The Childline counsellor will, without reporting it and escalating it, just send them a link so that they can have that taken down themselves in a confidential space. So that isn't necessarily protecting future children, but it is empowering that child. And definitely, I completely agree with you, Jeremy, but I think just one of my main points was more just assuming that they are going to make mistakes and that these things are going to happen, and they're not in trouble at that point.
Absolutely.
Because that shuts down reporting all sorts of abuse for young women that we work with in all sorts of circumstances. But definitely with parents, schools, police, if they think that they have been in the wrong, even in the slightest in the first place, they're never going to try and seek support for it. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Empowering them is so important, and there's so many resources now for young people online.
Yeah, this is an interesting way to ask then. So I think both points are really actually important. I think they can work really well hand in hand. So at what point, so again, I always try and relate this back to a 10-year-old, and we have so many parental controls on all her online stuff, be it laptop, phone, whatever. She's got so many parental controls, but I know that it's almost pointless because none of her friends do. So are we better? So I suppose my question is, do you think there's enough parental controls out there on devices? Or is that education piece that Jeremy is talking about, is that more important? Because if they're going to see stuff anyway, is the education side more important than the parental controls?
Can I just quickly come in there, please? Parental controls are easy to get around if you've grown up with technology. If you're in a peer group and your friends are seeing something that your parents have stopped you from seeing, you will find a way around that, no problem. And your parents will never find out because they don't know about technology half as much as you do. So that's my.
So that's absolutely right, and but they are useful with younger children.
Understood.
But actually, they become less effective as children move into adolescence. But there's some basic principles here, I think, about child sexual abuse prevention more generally. And then we think about how we use them in those principles in online spaces. So there's some really interesting research that's come out from Australia over the last 2-3 years, looking at support for parents around child sexual abuse prevention. and comparing that kind of messaging that we commonly give about to parents about what child sexual abuse is and what the signs and indicators are, and what you should do if you're concerned, and looking at what impact that has in comparison to some basic stuff around parenting. And the suggestion that's coming from that research is that the stuff that's probably more effective around child sexual abuse prevention is age-appropriate gatekeeping and monitoring, which, going back to kind of Jeremy's point, you know, when we were all kids, when we were younger, you know, when you're young, your parents know who you're hanging out with and where you are. As you move into your teenage years, there's a bit of that, but actually there's also a little bit of that's impossible to monitor as a parent, and we need to accept that. So age-appropriate gatekeeping and monitoring, and then warmth and openness in parenting style. So if things go wrong, that actually the child feels that they can go to their parent and not be judged in relation to that. And finally, the last component is the building of resilience for children and being able to handle complex situations as they get older, which is back to that thing then about digital resilience. When kids become teenagers, we will not be able to monitor them online. Let's be frank about it. So we need to make sure that they have the skills to be able to navigate risks themselves. And if things get out of hand, they can go to adults and get help.
Yeah. I like that actual discussion on digital resilience, because that brings us quite well on to my next question, which is around education. And is there enough of it within schools in regards to this? And obviously, since primary one, kids are now on computers. So like you say, they're far more adapt to the online world than most of us probably. But obviously, Kim and Marianne, you deal with children, you are in there teaching them, you're educating them and working with them and hearing the stories and experiences they're going through. Is there enough education within schools? Should it be added in? Is it a responsibility of the school, or should it be down to parents? Or what's your thoughts on this?
Oh, sorry, Kim.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say, well, actually going back to also what Jeremy was saying, he was very much like empowering the child, which actually you've still got, not, you get adults teaching children, do you know, I know it gets less so in secondary school, but you still get adults teaching children. Now, I look at a situation quite a few years ago in local primary school that my daughter attended, and it was the children that were teaching the actual teachers, you know, to do with online stuff. So I actually think, is it a peer thing that actually we should have children teaching children? That whole peer support I see works so well across the board. So it goes back to what Jeremy's saying, and I know everyone here will agree with that empowerment, that peer support, so important. So I think children hate getting dictated to, and quite often they are cocky and think, oh, we know much more than them. And they're in this situation, they are right, but they need protected. So they should probably be teaching the teachers, us, as well as then teaching their peers. It's just a point that I thought that whole peer support is so important, so important. So I feel it's an accumulation of different teachings that maybe has never happened in schools before. And yes, parents should be involved in that process as well, because we need to learn, me being a parent as well. Yeah.
Marianne?
Sorry, Marianne.
Oh, sorry,
Jeremy, were you going to say?
I'll just
Yeah,
sit
but
back, let you guys chat.
Marianne, if you've got something.
I was just going to echo what you said. Yeah, I think there's definitely a massive part of the curriculum is digital safety. However, teenagers, if you ask teenagers, I'm sure they'll tell you, you know, yeah, we get it, you know, it's all the time, we get it all the time. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, this is dangerous. And I'm not too sure if what's trying to be achieved is being achieved. No disrespect to education services, they're obviously doing their best, but it's just the nature of teenagers is they don't like Kim said, they don't like being told what to do and what they can't do. It's like drugs, you know, don't take drugs, drugs are bad. We know that message doesn't really work with children and young people. So yeah, welcome some other sort of approaches.
And I don't I don't feel that education only has to be coming from school. I mean, where else are children? Where is children's attention? They go to school because they're told to go to school. They're learning so much from their phones. It's incredible. They're learning from social media posts. They're learning from TikToks. They're learning from TV. They're learning from film, right? So why can't we also meet them where they're at? Right? Why can't we start making incredible, engaging TikToks about these conversations? Why can't we make a TV series following a character that goes through all of these troubled times, and they're so invested in the character, and they're learning subconsciously about the troubles of the internet? We just keep our fingers crossed that more celebrities start talking out about this. That's education as well. You know, not everybody gets on with the school environment. They're learning from all different aspects. Jessie Nelson came out with who's a musician from Little Mix, and she's got like 8 million followers on Instagram. She came out with a documentary called Against the Odds, which was about online abuse. And can you even imagine how many millions of children young people watched that and took inspiration from her to be more aware of what they're doing online? So I feel like education needs to come. It's the new world. It's not just school. Education needs to come from every angle, and we can help do that. Stop It Now. I know that Stop It Now made an incredible short series of videos about about your service. If you feel like you are in danger of looking at something illegal online, you can call us anonymously. And it was filmed so well. It was so engaging. I did a reaction video and put it on my YouTube channel because I was so impressed. And I commented over it. And I just think, you know, let's use the media space as well. Let's reach these people where they're at. That's how they consume information.
But totally agree with you, Jeremy. I mean, I think it is about public education. I mean, schools have a role, but it's only part of the solution. The work that we did in Glasgow, where we, you know, got young people to tell us what they wanted at different kind of age groups. The kind of key messaging that we got from young people about how they want to learn about online safety was they didn't want a teacher standing at the front of the classroom, chalk and talk, here are the things that you need to know. What they wanted was discussions. They wanted to sit in small groups and talk about what are the risks online and how do you navigate that and what people's experiences are, kind of learning from their peers and developing the kind of compass that allows them to navigate the stuff themselves, with some adults nudging them in the right direction. I think I mean, the other thing that came from that bit of work that we did was that, you know, young people were saying, you know, the discussions on online safety take place over here, and then we have these other educational inputs that are about consent. And actually nobody then locks those two things together in any meaningful way, because the key thing about online safety is how do you have safe and trusting relationships online. So the ideas around consent need to be applicable in online spaces, but we don't lock these things together for teenagers in meaningful ways.
I think you brought up a really good topic there, Stuart, in terms of consent. I think that's a huge area that needs to be discussed more among young people yet and online. And it's something as an adult and actually even with people around about me, things that have happened over the years, it is something there's a real, I hate using the word ignorance about, but even like my generation above, you know, a fine line between consent. Again, it's an education for everyone. I think that's a huge education in itself for young people, for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. We've got another panel coming up on consent, and actually another panel we've got coming up is around pornography and actually how pornography, particularly in youth, totally blurs that line in regards to consent. So it's a really interesting one that's coming up, and actually I've made a note to bring in that connection with online as well, because it's not something I considered to be that additional subject to it. So I've noted that. Sorry, Jeremy, on you go.
Just to feel a bit optimistic, I suppose, that with the word consent, I never knew what consent meant throughout my schooling and was never taught about consent. not one bit, not one lesson can I remember that was about consent. In fact, we used to have a 1 hour PSE lesson, which was about, you know, it didn't even mention the word sex. For God forbid you'd say that word at school, you know. So I just feel like we can take some optimism. I know it's not enough, but we are playing catch up, right? And I feel like now consent is, you know, there's a RSE curriculum here in England that's compulsory in secondary schools, and I feel like we are definitely making moves forward, and things are changing. Of course, we want them to change faster, but I feel like also we can feel optimistic with certain things.
I totally agree with what my... Sorry, go on, Marianne.
Oh, sorry, there's a thirst as well in Glasgow for schools to be educated, and there's a lot of really good work going on at the moment with young people running some of it themselves actually as well. The Enough project, we go out to schools, youth groups, anywhere that will have us really that are working with the age group, and we do escape the trap training, which takes in, because none of these things are really isolated, you know, online abuse, consent, healthy relationships, they all kind of, it's social, it's political, it's everywhere, and none of it's isolated, it doesn't operate in a vacuum. So it's about going and getting those conversations and young people having them between each other and challenging each other on their kind of gendered views.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on slightly from the online dangers and grooming, Jeremy, I'd like you to start the conversation and just tell us a bit about, you know, your experiences of grooming in childhood.
So I feel like the conversation is mirrored into the physical world as well when it comes to grooming and young people in the vulnerable stages of life that they are being taken advantage of in these ways. And, you know, I have lived the experience of this. I was 8 years old. It was 1993, so completely different era. But the whole grooming thing, the whole word grooming, and the whole information that we have out there about grooming, I just think there's a huge lack of understanding within the public about this. Stuart, when you were talking at the start about like the stereotypes, I feel like they are still very strong. I feel like people think that all grooming, all sexual abuse of young people, minors, is like some kind of very thought out, planned, organized crime, which I'm sure it is in many cases. But I also think it's just people that want to do something like this, throwing out bait and seeing who bites. Yeah. And so I think also, I think the conversation is huge, and more education, more information needs to be out there. And again, how are we going to get it out there? Because if I put on my Instagram, on the image on my Instagram, 5 signs of grooming, people are flicking past that. Nobody is going to stop at that post, because, and who do we want to stop at that post? We want people who have never thought about this topic before to stop at that post. Us 5 are going to stop at that post because we're interested in that, learning more about that topic. But it's about your average mother, your average father. How are we going to grab their attention? And that's the puzzle that I'm trying to figure out here. But yes, maybe I just briefly go over my story. So I was 8 years old. The man was 25 years old. He was a nurse and a very honorable man in society from the outside. And he took a liking to me and managed to trick me and manipulate me into sexual activity. Lasted 2 years. I never said a thing to anyone until I was 27 years old. So it finished when I was 10, 17 years later. And now I speak out about it, trying to get these conversations out there, trying to let people know that if they want to talk about it, it's okay. It wasn't their fault. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. You were a kid. And that's my life mission now. And that's hopefully a nice introduction to conversation.
Oh, thank you, Jeremy. Thanks for sharing that as well.
Thanks,
There you go, Kim. I
was just saying thanks for sharing that, Jeremy. And there's one word that springs to mind, I know it came up earlier on, was I think a lot of people, children and people, one of the biggest things that I come across in various personally and other people around about me and people I've worked with is the word shame. And I didn't know what shame was. I didn't find out that I'd lived with shame all my life till I was in my 40s. So I think that's another conversation that needs to, should really open conversation about, shame. And, it changed my life, actually realizing I'd carried shame all my life. And I think having these conversations can really, really, really help and going back to that word, empower everybody.
Yeah, Madeline Black, we've talked to her a lot about this, and she very much is like, it's not her shame to carry. Yeah. And it's such, like you, when she realised that, it was such a powerful moment to start healing and moving on. And so, obviously, we've talked a lot about, educating children, being able to speak up, that trust. And obviously, there's still a big question that actually none of us potentially have the answer to right now, is how do we do it in a way that the kids are going to see it? Because, like there's TV programs that go viral, and there's influencers out there that really, if they were talking about these things, that make a difference. But how do we, where is the information just now? And for children to know, how are we going to get them to read it? Because sure, I know you guys have so much amazing content on your website. We have shared it multiple times already. How do we get kids to learn about this? Like, what is the next step going forward?
So I'm going to push back a little bit on this, actually. Because there are resources out there. If we have a website called Upstream, which is for parents and members of the public in Scotland, which is, all the practical things that we can do as parents to prevent sexual abuse happening. And you'll find resources there that, like the NSPCC's Pantosaurus resource, which is a terrific resource for kids between probably about kind of 3 and 8 in relation to child sexual abuse prevention, and them understanding their bodies, and understanding that adults don't have a right to touch and have access to their bodies. So, I mean, there are brilliant resources out there, but my pushback is this: I don't think it's the responsibility of children to stop themselves being sexually abused. I think it's the responsibility of adults, and it's the responsibility of adults who present a risk of harm to kids to make safer choices, and for us to get the right messaging out to them. And it's the responsibility of those who are already protected to be better protectors. So our helpline, on a daily basis, aside from the calls that we get from people who are offenders, we get loads of calls that come in from parents, for instance, who have questions like, so my uncle is playing with my 3-year-old daughter in a way that makes me feel uncomfortable. And he started telling some jokes about how my 3-year-old daughter is his new sexy girlfriend. What should I do about that? And we need to get better at helping people have those conversations and think about protective actions, probably through the stuff that Jeremy was talking about, through public education and recognizing this as a public health issue.
I love it.
Yeah.
Again, I just want to say, Stuart, I love Stop It Now's work. So I'm all for this conversation. And we've talked now for 3/4 of this meeting about educating children on how to avoid or protect themselves. We probably should have also talked about how we're going to educate children on how to not commit these crimes as well. Because if you take a school of children, at least one of those children are going to grow up to somebody who commit a crime of a sexual nature, right? And I think the percentages or the statistic would be scary on that. So, like, are we going to talk to children about protecting themselves? Yes. Are we going to talk to children also about how to, I don't know how to word it, how to avoid committing a crime of a sexual nature and why you shouldn't commit a crime of a sexual nature? And then, of course, are we going to work with or support, however you want to term it, the people who are looking for help, who feel like they're going to commit a crime of a sexual nature and that need support in not doing so.
I love that you flipped this round, actually, because it reminds me very much of the women's safety panel we had, where there was a lot of discussion about apps that women could use to keep themselves safe, things that women could do. It was all about what women could do and girls could do. Actually, if people stopped harming them, then we would need all these things. So how do we, it's a brilliant point. And actually, why should we have to educate our children so much? I think, sure, you're absolutely right. If we could educate the people that are likely to do the harm or prevent that, surely that would be a much more successful
early identification as well. And that's amongst, we've not really talked that much about peers as well, which is a shame, because the most influential thing on any young person's life is their peer in most cases. And if peers can be just talking to each other, if we can equip them, like Jeremy said, give them the tools, equip them to be having these difficult conversations, and kind of create and foster an environment where calling out is actually okay as well, in a safe, productive way. You know, calling out, you know, that was a bit weird, what he said or what she said is a bit off, that's off. It'll help us identify things earlier, you know, in order to protect people from themselves and protect their potential victims as well.
You're right. There's a really key important stuff on bystander interventions and all of this, and that has to be really upstream in terms of preventative stuff, but also further downstream as well, insofar as, you know, we know that if children are to tell anyone in childhood that they have been harmed in some way, they are more likely to tell a peer than anyone else. But actually, all our systems around safeguarding are about going and speaking to an adult. We don't think about the protective capacity that peers could bring in these situations.
Yeah,
very true. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So is there anything else that we've missed that you guys want to talk in more detail about? I'm aware that time is short, and all these panel events are always the same. I make a massive list of questions that actually could be another 10 panel events.
It would be really useful just to say that support absolutely is out there, because we've not really talked too much about being a victim to this. Support is out there. Confidential support is out there if you don't want to report and escalate. And also that if you feel that this is happening to a friend, the support is out there for you as well, because it's quite a hard thing to support somebody with. And also that not all victims, particularly in teenage years, and particularly if they've experienced adversity elsewhere, will see themselves as victims at all for a very, very long time. So, you know, that's a challenge as well, helping a victim to see that what's happening to them maybe isn't a good thing in some cases.
In regards to victims, does it tend to be, if, you know, later in life that people come forward with this? Can you help more if it's identified earlier? You know, is it, you know, I know that the case studies I've looked at, it tends to be adult, like you said, Jeremy, yourself. Later on in life, you actually start coming forward. Does it help better with recovery or healing or learnings if it's discovered earlier, like if you did know, if you did come forward?
I would say, and I am not an expert academically or anything like that, right? But I just always try to relate it to my own experience. I think what would have been helpful is if I knew I could speak out when I was ready. Because if, let's say, when I was 20, somebody identified that this happened to me and started coming to me, telling me I need to do this, telling me I need to do that, I wouldn't have been ready for it. It needs to be at the person's pace. So if we could live in a world where there are countless opportunities to talk to different types of people and everybody's aware of it, then people will come forward when it's their time to come forward.
We don't want to, as Jeremy said, victims are already carrying blame and shame, and you absolutely don't want to put the burden of a perpetrator's actions on them. So, you know, if I had come forward, far less people would have been because it's the perpetrators that's to blame, never the victim. So they already carry enough of that themselves without feeling the weight.
Excellent. Guys, it's been such an interesting conversation, and like you say, I am no professional in this either. I come on here to host it, and we bring you guys on to educate people and start a conversation. You know, I am a mum of a 10-year-old, and every conversation is a learning, and it helps us. It helps everyone watching take the learnings home. I have got so many additional panel event ideas now that we can do just from stuff we will never get to cover in 1 hour. But obviously for everyone watching, the So What If campaign was named by a panel of survivors of various different types of abuse. And they were fed up basically with people saying, well, so what that this happened, so what that you have to use these apps to stay safe, etc. They wanted to change the narrative to, well, what if you could walk home and not worry about things? What if your kids could just go to the park and not worry what's going to happen, or they can play a game online? And what we're going to do is take all these what ifs and all the learnings from all the experts through the panels for the full year of 2022 and create a document that's going to go to the government, and it'll be our asks. This campaign is not about one person, it's a platform to bring everybody together to give their views, to open discussions, to create learnings and more questions. So what I'd like to finish with is go around the panel and ask you, what is your what if? So Jeremy.
Can I go? Can I? I haven't got.
I'll come back to you. Yeah, Marianne, what's your what if?
What if there was no risk of sexual violence for young people whilst online?
Thanks, Marianne. Stuart?
I'm going to cheat and throw in two, which is, but they are related to each other. One is, what if every adult who was worried about their sexual thoughts and feelings towards children or their interactions with children managed to get support before they committed an offence? And similarly, what if every adult who was worried about the safety of a child was able to get the right kinds of support to be able to protect children more effectively before abuse takes place?
Stuart. Kim?
Mine's similar to Stuart, is what if everyone felt supported? So whatever side you're on, they felt supported, because everyone struggles, you know. So what if everyone felt and was supported?
Jeremy, back to you.
Mine would be, what if the education system gave as much priority to these subjects as they do English, maths and science?
Good, it's good.
Yeah, very good.
It was worth waiting for, Jeremy. That's a good one. Thank you. So for everyone watching, thank you so much. I hope that it's helped you. I'm going to ask the panel to send me all the different links of resources and help that we've mentioned through this, and we will add it to both the Thriving Survivors and the So What website. We will be downloading this and adding it onto all social channels and sharing it with our panel. It'll be on YouTube, it'll be on the website. Please share it, watch it, ask the questions, start the conversations, and if it's created more questions for you, then please ask us. We will tag everybody in the posts as well. So if you want to have further discussions, it's there. Importantly as well, if this has brought up anything difficult with yourself, if you need support or help, then you can get in touch with Thriving Survivors. You can get in touch with Stop It Now. There's, like the panel said, there's so much support out there. Please do not be alone and come forward and have that conversation. Of course, the campaigns coming forward, we do a campaign. It is the third Friday of every month, and we've got campaigns coming up. The next one's July, and that's on safety in the LGBTQIA+ community. We've got a brilliant panel coming on for that. We then get a panel on consent, which we have had multiple conversations over the month of May on, which are all pre-recorded, but we're bringing it all together on a live panel as well. We're then going on to a men's panel, which I won't be on that one. That is going to be posted via mail, and it's solely going to be men on that panel. And then finally, we're going to finish up in November with our safety campaigns panel. And that one is where we are basically, we will have the paper ready for the government. We'll have everyone's what ifs, and we will discuss that between all the safety panels and see if it's right, if there's changes to be made, if it is what, you know, if it's ready to go. And then we'll finish up the end of this year in December with a face-to-face event where everybody is welcome. And we will go through the what ifs. We will have some of the campaigns and some of our speakers from the year up talking as well. And it will be a pretty special event to end this on. Although, to be honest, I think we've got to have years worth of panel discussions on this. So thank you everybody for watching, and thank you so much to the panel for all your input. And we look forward to seeing you next month for our next panel.